Hi, this is Roger Smith, the True Blue Lounge. Today I have a guest, a 1999 Wolmers School for Girls, Diana Sharpe. Diana, how you doing?
I'm doing amazing. How about you?
Good, good, good. Hey, this is really, really exciting for me because even though we speak and laugh and joke, I don't know you. And in the spirit of things, I looked on the Wolmers website and I saw that this color, blue, is true for you guys too. So it kind of works out. It is blue, isn't it?
No, maroon and gold.
So why did I see blue?
I'm not sure. Oh, our uniform.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So there is a sea of blue and white. So blue tunic, white blouse, yeah, that's interesting. That's a very, very good question.
Okay, okay.
Because our school colors, like for sports and administration and our badge, is maroon and gold.
Okay, but I did see blue and white.
You did. A
Is that
sea
like
of
sixth
blue and
form?
white. You'd see it all from prep and Wilma's girls. The
Oh,
boys wear a maroon and gold epaulette and a maroon and I think a maroon tie, maroon and gold striped tie for sixth form. Yeah.
okay, okay. So tell me something. What was it? So I'm a country boy. Even though I lived in Jamaica for just 5 years, I'm still a country boy from Westmoreland. So tell me what, I was going to say junior school. What primary school did you go to?
Excelsior Primary.
Okay,
Instant 3.
and what do they call that part of Kingston?
Vineyard Town,
Vineyard
close to
Town.
Mountain View Avenue.
Okay, was that a nice area?
Um, it could be complex at different times. So where the school was located, we had several entrances to the school. Um, the primary school was nestled up an avenue in Vineyard Town, nice and quiet and safe. But if you came through the high school gates, you would have entered from Mountain View Avenue, which there were times would have had some uproar and wasn't always safe. But the primary school
Was it in a
had
garrison?
no. It wasn't. A garrison is by definition a stronghold, right? Difficult to
Okay.
come in and out of. It
Okay.
wasn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is when you say uproar, what you talking about? Burning tires and stuff?
Yeah, sometimes that happens.
Okay. Okay. We'll have
Yeah.
to talk more about that. So, what was it like as a little girl going to school? At primary school, did someone take you to school?
Yes, absolutely. And we actually lived very close to school, which just made it so wonderful. Like we literally lived a couple steps for the first few years of my life. And so
Okay.
my grandmother took me to school. And then when
Okay.
we moved, we went a couple streets away, still walking distance. And she also took me to school. I think she took me to school all the way to grade 7, which was high
Okay.
school.
Wow.
The first couple of mornings, she would take you. And again, the school was walking distance. It was a long distance at this time, but like 45 minutes, you're young, you have strong legs, you have a sister to walk with, you have friends to walk with and talk. So we did it, right? So the first couple of times she would walk with us. We even took the bus to Crossroads. But the interesting thing is, we found that you had to walk from our home to the bus stop 10, 15 minutes. Then you waited forever on the bus. Then you push to get into the bus, squeeze up to get in the bus, soil your shoes on the bus. Then you get to Crossroad and the walk down to Marasca Road is another 7, 10 minutes. So
Wow.
over time, we figured out that it made perfect sense to walk all the way to school and just talk and just,
Okay.
enjoy childhood moments.
Okay. So let me ask you this. So I like to do a bit of a cognitive test so I can see who I'm talking to. If I
Okay.
asked you to name 5 boys and 5 girls from your first form class, sorry, no boys because you went to one of those schools, one of those girls' schools.
Yes.
So could you name me like 7 or 8 girls that you went to school at first form? Would that be difficult?
Did they have to be in my class?
Why not? Yeah, your class. Yeah, that's
I
what
could
I'm
try.
okay,
I could
okay.
try. Alicia Wedderburn, now Christy, Alison McFarlane. There is a Denisha. Um, it's
Three.
hard. I have
Wow.
3.
Wow.
Um,
How
that
many
was a
kids?
long time ago,
How
though.
many
That was
kids?
1993. Let me see. So what the persons I name are my friends. So I named my good friends.
Right, right, right.
Who else was in that class? That was 1M. The form teacher was Mr. Johns. Um, oh, Shamar Lester. Um, I Cheryl. There was Cheryl. Cheryl was in my class. Elizabeth Taylor. I feel
Wow.
like Elizabeth
Someone
Taylor.
gave their
Yeah.
name Liz Taylor. Wow.
Yes, Elizabeth Taylor. Elizabeth Taylor was definitely in my class.
You're up to six already, so I'm not gonna
I'm
make
at
you.
six.
Yeah, you're at six already. So you're doing okay. You're doing okay.
Okay.
Your brain is on par. So before I go into some of the deeper questions, um, what what's your drink of choice? If you go to a nice restaurant, what would you like to drink?
Um, Drink of choice, excluding pop, excluding soda, excluding the obvious orange juice. I would have to say white wine.
Okay,
And
and
I don't have a big wine knowledge. I don't
white
have a,
wine, all right. White wine, all right.
but just white wine is good. Yeah.
What about non-Jamaican food? And then give me Jamaican food.
Um, Non-Jamaican food of choice would definitely have to be, the thing is we have pizza in Jamaica, but pizza is such a big North American thing. And so I always grew up eating pizza in Jamaica from Pizza Hut. But I do believe it's really, really heavily North American because it's so processed and it's fast food. So definitely food of choice that I would consider not really authentic to Jamaica, and a Jamaican home cooked meal would definitely be pizza. Love it, love it, love it.
Wow.
And then next in line, I'm loving Nigerian food and Ghanaian food. So definitely like jollof rice.
Okay.
Definitely jollof rice. If I was gonna have anything, jollof rice. If I was looking at like a global cuisine, and Jamaica, I have too many because I'm a foodie.
All right. Give me your
I'm
top two. Top two.
top two. I would eat this every day. I would eat curry goat every day, and I'd also eat stew peas every day.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool. Cool. All right. So, can you walk me through from graduation? So, do you remember? Did you have a graduation ball?
We did, but I didn't go.
Okay. Okay. You didn't go.
I
All
didn't
right.
get a chance to go.
So, what was going to an all girls school very strict?
It was. Yeah. Wolmers is one of the oldest high schools in Jamaica, and most certainly one of the oldest girls' schools as well. Um, and so we had a long tradition. We had a tradition of excellence and a tradition of girls being a certain kind of way. And coming from the British culture, there was lots of expectations in terms of how we wore uniform, how we spoke, how we conducted ourselves. So I went to Wolmer's during the time of Miss Pamela Harrison, and she had some famous words. Her posture was famous. Her posture was unique and distinct. She stood upright, she walked upright, and she always said to us, if we were talking under a bench, anywhere, making noise, she would clap us, girls, and then she'd wag her fingers, you're making too much noise. And she'd warn us against being loud, raucous, and ordinary. Those were her famous words. And she didn't believe a Wolmerian should be any of those things. She didn't believe a lady should be any of those things. And so it was strict in the area of discipline was always enforced. The school gate was closed at a certain time. So there were many things that you were punished for or held accountable for. So punctuality was a big one. Not being prepared for class was another one. So now we live in a context where students are so unfamiliar with being ready and just unfamiliar with expectations and just showing up prepared. Back then, you had to show up prepared. And if you weren't prepared, you had to go outside. So if it was physical education and you didn't bring your attire, if it was full white, you had to wear white sneakers. When you were playing your netball, if it was swimming, you had to bring your swim cap. And if you never had those gears, you were actually pulled out and told to sit in the gym, and oftentimes embarrassed too. And as a little girl, sometimes it was a lot. It could be embarrassing, especially if your parents never had all the resources, or for some people, you know, they just weren't feeling well. And so everything, there was a level of expectation, and there was a very high level of discipline that was just fostered among us in terms of the way we conducted ourselves, the values that we upheld, you know, values like honesty, integrity, no cheating, no, you know, just being honest, speaking the truth. So at the time when I went to high school, I'm very happy we didn't have any kind of corporal punishment. Nobody was beating you in your hand with a ruler. That may have been happening other places across Jamaica. And I know most certainly schools would do that to boys. You know, boys were still being, you know, hitting their hands with ruler and things like that. We didn't get that. But the punishment, the demerits, being locked out of class, was enough to scare you away from just being unruly. And definitely, we had our suspensions. We had in house suspensions. You sat on the principal's veranda if you gave trouble. And if it was really, really bad and offensive, you had to be out of school for 3 days. So
So
it
did
was a
girls
real,
fight and stuff like that?
yes, but it wasn't the norm. We didn't have like, we didn't have fights daily. We didn't have fights breaking out just all the time. No, it wasn't
Because there
that
were
kind of.
ladies there, was there?
Yes,
Ladies
and it
don't
wouldn't have
fight.
been, it wasn't encouraged. And if you had one too many fights or one too many arguments, you were asked to leave,
So tell me
right?
this, Diana. So compared to Immaculate Conception, where did Wolmer's girls rank?
You know, it's always hard to compare, right? And let me tell you why. And this is why we always have to be careful. The experience of the girls at Immaculate would have been their own. The context would have been different. Immaculate Conception is a Catholic school. And so their upbringing and their training and everything would have been facilitated within a Catholic environment. They would have done things we didn't do, like Mass. We had devotion, but they would have had Mass. Um, and so I believe it is never fair to compare because I've never had a lived experience at Immaculate. I can't say I've attended for a day. I attended Wolmers and Queens. I did. So I can compare the two, but I can't compare Immaculate Conception. But I think there's an inference in your question to suggest that one may be better than the other, or
No,
one might be higher than the
well,
other.
there's a reason I asked that because so going to Manning School, there's sort of like
Yes,
this pride with academia because we don't do sports that well. And
right.
I'm gonna get caned for this, but I'm just saying. So we pride ourselves with the amount of passes and the the 9 O levels, 5 A levels
Right.
person went to Manning's type of stuff. So I just wanted to know academically
Oh,
where the
perfect.
schools.
Academically, I don't know if you have pulled up the stats or you have looked at it recently, but Wilma's girls have always been in the top 10,
Okay.
always. And I believe Immaculate might be in the top five. And
Okay.
so they would have always done exceptionally well. They have a tradition of excellence, and so does Wolmers. So Wolmers girls have always ranked very high academically in terms of the number of passes we have always gotten. Comparatively, I'd have to look at it much closer and more recently. But I haven't. I think we looked at it maybe in 2023 and 2024, and I do believe we would still be in in close proximity to the performance. But I do believe maybe Immaculate might be ranked higher than Wolmers, and that may have always been from my time, in
Okay.
terms of number of passes and things like that.
Tell me a little bit about your from fifth form graduation. Did you go sixth form? And just give me some steps to where you are now in Saskatchewan, Canada, or whatever that town's
All
name
right.
is.
I'm gonna give you the real deal because I know you want the real deal. So when you talked about fights and when you talked about those things, that touched a nerve for me, right? Because I went to a school that didn't encourage it, but and I'm not ashamed because it speaks to my growth. So I've never fought at school, but I was a part of a group that was so popular that it could get a little bit rowdy and it could get a little bit raucous. And so I believe that for me to really shine and for my life and everything to be successful, I felt like I needed a do over after fifth form. Like I needed fresh wings. I needed to start somewhere new, create a new circle and just grow into where I knew I wanted to go and who I could truly, truly, truly become. And so I made the decision of going to the Queen's High School for Girls, another all girls school, an Anglican school, an esteemed school, but not many people felt that way. Not many people felt that way. There was always the view. So when you asked me that question, I almost wasn't sure how I should receive the Immaculate Conception because people do that all the time. But when you have the lived experience, you know what is really happening on the ground. And when you look at the data, sometimes the data shows that what we think is not necessarily true. Now, when it coming from Wolmers, one of the things persons always felt was that Wolmers was such an extremely high performing school and Queens was not. And when I went there, I found that to be not true. We had excellent teachers, we had excellent resources, students were doing well. And I always say that I did just as well or more. I did exceptionally well in my sixth form when I compared it to my fifth form. And that had nothing to do with Wolmer's and the teaching. That just simply had to do with my focus. So after the end of fifth form, you have your CXCs and then you go to your sixth form and you have your A levels. Sometimes you graduate with 7 CXCs and then you end up with like 3 A levels. I had almost as many A levels as I did CXCs. And that was a
Oh,
testament to the
you're one of
quality.
those. You're one of
Yes,
those.
yes. It was a testament to the quality of the teaching, the resources, and the support, and just the maturity. Right now, I work with students, and I encourage my students not to be discouraged because performance just improves incrementally with maturity. In grade 11, I struggled with math in 1999. And by the time I do my master's in 2012, people are wondering, wow, who is this girl? Right? My stats grade was stats 1 and 2 was through the roof. Level, master's level classes, and I did exceptionally well. So when students struggle in fifth form, I'm very encouraging of them and supportive of them because I know they are not yet fully realizing their full potential. And so I went to sixth form at the Queen's High School for Girls and spent 2 amazing years there. I always dreamed of being a lawyer. I was a talker, and just an advocate for people. And I'm always seeing things that need to be fixed and need to be argued about. And my dream was to become a lawyer. But I used to do very well in English, and English was one of my strong areas. And lots of persons thought I should become a teacher. I didn't want that. I resisted that. Yet here I am in a couple of weeks going to be graduating as a licensed teacher in Canada. So full circle moment. But I didn't want to be a teacher. I wanted to be a lawyer. And so I applied to go to law school. And that didn't happen. Did not happen. Didn't get through to my first choice. I was accepted into the Faculty of Arts with a major in English and a minor in political science. Yeah. So I think we could pause there and yeah, and we could
Wow.
maybe reflect on that. But yeah,
That,
that's
that,
me.
so, in true Roger fashion, so I didn't do a lot of subjects, but the subjects I excelled in were, pure maths, applied maths, and physics.
Wow.
I don't do literature, history, anything to do with reading, but those ones were really good for me. So what I want to ask you is, how do you being, I can hear from the way you speak that you read a lot of books. You're very, what we would call artsy. How did you get your maths up? Because that's not easy when your brain doesn't actually think like a
Yeah.
mathematician naturally
Yes.
unless you're a little bit out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, there are few people that I've met who are outliers. So I've met some people in my program who are strong. Like there are a couple of sisters, or there's a sister pair, and there are a couple of people in my program who they're outliers. So they're strong with math and English. And so they're doubly majoring in both. Kudos to them. As you suspect, I am a strong, strong art student. I don't have a math brain. I also now work in the faculty of engineering and I don't have a design brain. I don't. But one of the things I pride myself on is my ability to grasp concepts easily and also my ability to hone skills and become better. Like I'm a good student. And what I mean by that is I have the ability and the willingness to learn things. And I know that there are processes to learn and do well. So for me, math doesn't come easily. And so what I'll do is I'm in the class, I'm alert. I'm going to be the most alert person you can find. I'm taking notes and I'm going home to practice, even as an adult. So in 2012, I would have been 30 when I'm doing my master's. And I applied myself as if I was 10 or 15, with zeal and energy and enthusiasm, with routines. So I set up a time to study. I determine how many of the problems I need to practice in order to fully get the concept. And usually for me, it's 2 or 3 or 4 times. And then I have a aha moment. And then once I get it, I get it. And so when I didn't pass math in grade 11. That was a humbling experience, but I was one of many. Most of us suffered because our math teacher wasn't that great. And I'm only learning that now as an adult in a group of students who are now who celebrated our 25th anniversary, like people who I consider to be brilliant and who were in the bright streams of Wolmers. They didn't pass or they struggled simply because we didn't have some of the best, or we didn't have the best math teacher. Some of us didn't have the best. Some groups did. And so when I went to Queens, we had an amazing math teacher, and he said, math is practice. He said, math is disciplines. It's understanding that math is fully operational. There are
Wow.
certain computational operations, and you have to do them, and they follow a logical sequence. And that's sometimes what we need to do. We need to train our mind to see the logical sequence in everything, right? Same thing when you're doing, order of operations. Students want to do it anyhow. And you say to students, no, there's a rule, there's a principle. And so if you understand that math have rules and principles and you follow them through, then I think over time. But for me, it wasn't any of those things really that I can attribute the success to. I would say it's what we did back in the day, which we call rote learning, practicing the thing over and over and over. That kind of discipline that after a while, there's no way you're not going to be able to know it.
Yes,
You
yes.
have to know it because it becomes a part to you. So
At primary school, we used to shout out the countries and the presidents and the prime ministers, especially of African countries. We used to do that at Unity Primary School. And even till today, you name the countries, I can tell you who the leaders were in the mid 70s by virtue of the fact that we had
wow,
to parrot fashion, say what it is.
over and over, yeah.
Yeah. So you're very I find you a very positive person, very uplifting. You give more energy and sap none. And it's a real hard equilibrium because when you're such a giver of your energy, I always wonder where you get it from. So we're gonna get down that road. But tell me a time like a job that you done that you really didn't like the job and how you overcame the fact that you didn't like the job. And why I ask the question is a lot of people can't or refuse to sort of talk about things they didn't actually like. But for me, it's about the overcoming. That's what people want to hear.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've done very few jobs that I don't like, very, very few jobs. And so when you ask me that question, it's a pretty easy one because in Jamaica, I spent most of my life in the sales, marketing, and people management, right? Leadership. And then I come to Canada, and it goes back to this discipline and this routine, and especially a part of it of just being Jamaican as well. Just this zest and this zeal for learning. And so I did a business certificate program, and the most of the program was comprised of like accounting 1 and 2, financial literacy 100, um, econ 100, math 100, computer science, business. We had a business course as well, we had a communications course. And so I did so well
Wow.
that persons thought I was destined to be in business and destined to be a banker. No, I've lived my life in Jamaica, did a little securities course in Jamaica. I would have done investments. I like investments. I like wealth management. I like talking to clients about managing their money, but I never necessarily saw myself working in a bank. And so that was a new experience. And I wouldn't say I didn't like it because I love dealing with people. But I think the finer details of the job I did not like. And although it was sales, it wasn't the sales that we did in Jamaica. I said to the person who managed me at the time, I said, in Jamaica, we did relationship sales. You would visit the one client. If Roger, if you had a shop, I'd come by the shop often and say, boy, Mr. Roger, how you doing? And I check in on you. Mr. Roger, I see that you expand. I see that you have more mackerel on your shelf. And you don't have mine as yet. Do you want to carry it? And if you told me no, that would be fine. And I would still come and check in with you. And if there was any way I could help you or support you, I would do that. And over time, that relationship would spark a connection. And that connection would form some sort of buying relationship and it would lead to loyalty. It wasn't like that. The environment was bam, bam, bam. I don't need to know your details. I don't need to know your scenario, but I'm going to give you a credit card. And it was very unfamiliar to me. It was very uncomfortable for me. And I didn't do well and I didn't enjoy it. And I'd also never been in a position where I struggled. Never. I'd always been a success. I was always for my entire life in Jamaica, I was always a top sales rep, always a manager with a branch or in a branch that was doing exceptionally well. So now to not be doing well was very foreign to me. And so you ask an important question. How did I overcome?
That's the
Because
important one.
really, every single day we're going to have difficult moments. And how do you overcome and how do you show up? Showing up for me was easy because I had people to show up to and for. I had so many persons who were looking up to me. I don't know where I get this level of enthusiasm. I think I shouldn't say I don't know where. It's directly from God and my relationship with Him. But I know I've been called to pour back into others. I do have a lot of energy to give. Persons have observed me teaching and they've said to me, a gentleman last year who has taught for 30 full years, taught for 15, principal for 15. He said to me, do you have this much energy all day long? All day long? And I said, yes. And he says, oh my God. And he says, what are you like when you get home? And I said, the truth is sometimes I don't want to talk. And sometimes I still have lots of energy to keep talking and to keep pouring. I've had people call me at 6 a.m. in the morning and just says, give me a word, give me an encouragement, give me something to get on my way. This is tough. And so for me, what I did was I recognized that my purpose there was bigger than just how I felt in the moment. My purpose was bigger than that. I was an encourager to different people who were there who were struggling. And so that was one thing. Identifying that there's something bigger outside of you that you could potentially be contributing to. And the second thing was looking at what could I learn from the moment. Were there clients I could be meeting, people I could be connecting with? And then another part of it, the third part of it was recognizing that it wasn't permanent. It was not permanent. And linked to that permanence is the fact that you have agency. So I knew that at any point I could really change the trajectory of my life if I really sat down long enough, hard enough, and thought about where I wanted to go. And the fourth one, which is really could be number one, was I'm a planner. And I set goals and I want to hit them and I try to hit them. And so when I was in that time, I knew I had put a 2 year mark on it. And so just to go back and backtrack, I got into banking simply because a group of amazing lecturers thought I was deserving of an internship. And that was beautiful. Did the internship and I did amazing. And then I was headhunted by a competitor bank, went to the competitor bank in a significantly higher role. So the internship was for a teller, enjoyed it, small community. My managers were dropping me to work. We had fellowship, we had potluck, we had everything. Amazing scenario. I moved to a bigger city, moved to a different bank, and the context and the circumstances and even the KPIs. The measurements matter. How you measure your staff matter. If you're just looking at how many people they're calling and how much they're booking, and you're not looking at the growth and the retention of clients on the books and how clients feel, client satisfaction, then that can be problematic. And so overall, I just couldn't do well in a context like that. But the one thing that really, really kept me there and just helped me to go through what was a challenging moment was my faith. Because every time you have a challenging moment, you could determine, am I going to jump right away? And so I could go back to the point I said prior. You should never jump. You should never take that leap unless you have a plan. So no matter how tough the situation is, you still have to figure out, how am I going to survive? How am I going to pay my bills? What is next? and recognize that for me, I recognize we can't run from every difficult situation. You cannot. There's some difficult situation, if they're tolerable, if they're bearable, they come to teach you something. They come to make you better, and you can actually grow from it. So,
You know what I find amazing is, and you've kind of fast tracked this part of the conversation. So whenever I've seen you online and I've seen you in person, you epitomize the saying from the church: "By your fruits you shall know them."
wow.
There aren't much people I know that when I see them, they they just remind me of what I grew up thinking a Christian should be. You know what I mean? So
Wow.
there's just things about you that
Yeah.
are authentically Christian like. And even though I don't subscribe to the church in the
Right. And
way
that's it. Yeah.
I see it. So what I want to know from you is, how does your faith guide you? What's it all about for you, and how does it keep you going and keep you a success in what you do?
Faith is such an interesting thing. I think faith for all of us, whether we want to admit it or not, we all have some degree or level of faith, because faith is that thing you cannot see, but you believe. So I believe there's a higher being. I believe there's a God. I believe He cares about us. He loves us. He orders the world. And yes, we live in a world that's problematic. We live in a world that's chaotic. We live in a sinful world, but there's our faith that we can believe in something higher. I believe He came on earth, robed Himself in flesh, died for my sins. And I believe that I can enjoy peace, joy, love here on earth. And I believe that there is something greater and something beyond this earth, so eternal life. But you said, how does my faith impact me? In everything I do, everything I do. I've been a Christian for a long time. I've been a Christian as long as I can remember myself. I was raised in church, went to an Anglican church. I stood by the faith. I believed, in Jesus Christ. I believed in His coming on earth, dying for my sins. And as I grew up, I went to other denominations, and my faith remain unchanged. And for me, faith is one of those things that you can go to that place where you know that there is somebody bigger than you, there's something greater than you, something outside of you. And that thing and that person created the universe, and that person cares about me, little me. And sometimes your problems seem so big and so overwhelming. But then when you remember you have a God that's bigger than all of that, so your faith then becomes that substance. You can't see it, but when everything else around you is falling apart, you can hold on to it. And many, many times in many situations, whether it is loss, whether it is grief, whether it is unemployment, sometimes you have nothing else tangible to hold on to. You don't have your bank account to hold on to because you have no money. And so when you say to somebody, I have no money, sometimes your marriage has fallen apart, sometimes your relationships has fallen apart. For example, like myself, I've never been married, but maybe you're trying to, get to know somebody, or you're developing friendships or relationships, and that fall apart. And there's some grief and there's some loss. I've also been laid off once and resigned my job once. There's some serious loss comes with that. Then you see there's sickness. There's different illnesses around the world. There are, you know, global scares, global pandemics. And sometimes you're looking for something to hold on to. And that something is my faith. That's something that things will get better. That's something that I don't have to rely on my own strength. Um, I have somebody I can call on, and He's a very present help.
Surprisingly, you will be surprised to hear this or understand this, but we're pretty close in our thoughts, but
Yes.
you use different words. So
Okay.
you call something a pronoun, you'll say he, and you'll
Yes.
use the word God. But everything that you've said resonates with me. I just don't put labels
Okay.
on it. You know what I mean? And but hey, that's going to be for another chat. But I'm really honestly, and I don't mean it as a I'm trying to just be nice. Honestly, if anybody was to say to me, Roger, who would you say if someone was to write the word Christian and you were to play a game and you were to play a game, living or dead, I would call your name as number one because of the light that you shine. So I just think that's a testament to you, and that's why I wanted to talk to you.
Thank you.
Another thing I wanted to know from you is when when you're really crushed and having a really hard time, really, and there's no one to call, what do you do?
So I'm going to give you the human, honest, natural response because sometimes we want to over spiritualize things. I would love to tell you that I go and pray. I would love to tell you that I go in a closet and I seek out God. I don't do that always, and I don't always do that first. Sometimes it's when your strength, which is why I believe the relationship from God to man is a God thing. So it's often God that comes to us, meet us, takes care of the wound, bandage the wound, and so then I get some strength and then I can go to him. But oftentimes when I'm wounded and I'm feeling weak and I'm crushed. Oftentimes when you're crushed in your humanity. You're crushed in your flesh. It's your flesh that is crushed. And so although your spirit is there and your spirit is sometimes strong, your flesh in the moment overrides that. It's like an open gushing wound. So it's hard to say to the wound, stop bleeding because you have the spirit over here, which is so strong. So usually for me, I'm very happy and grateful that my coping mechanisms are not fully destructive. One might be, so one of the things I go to immediately is I sleep. So one of the things I do, one of the things that makes me feel better when I'm really crushed, you'll know how crushed I am when I stop talking, and that's not fully wholesome, but I'm working on it, and I've come a long way. So I'll sleep. I won't necessarily talk about what I'm going through until I've gained some perspective, some clarity, and until I can let the God shine out to me. A lot of times, sometimes people think I'm masking or they think I'm putting on, but when they see me is when a lot of the work has already been done. My heart has been repaired a little bit. Lots of times, lots of people don't know that I get angry or I feel bad or sometimes I want to act out a character. But sometimes when things happen, and one of the things also is that I'm very reflective, and I've always been like this. I've always been very emotionally aware, and sometimes something hurts me real bad, but I can take it away. And some days I reflect in the moment right away, and I'll come around and I recognize that the gift in the moment, or I recognize that there's a blessing in it or a lesson in it. And sometimes it takes me days, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days. And then I believe the Holy Spirit works on my heart, works on the situation. And then I just come around back again. And sometimes I may even share with the person, this offended me, this hurt me, or this happened. Or I may not go back to rehash the situation, but I deal with it that both of us now know that we're operating from a place of grace and forgiveness. Nothing is lost, nothing is missing, nothing is being harbored. But the first one I do is sleep. And then the second one I do is eat a lot. Sometimes I really feel down and out. I tend to think if I eat something, I'll feel better. So you say you want to cheer up yourself or you want something nice. So, my go-to are the ice creams. I used to often go and buy, I can't even find it now, like the Haagen-Dazs strawberry and the strawberry cheesecake, a good pizza. Living in Canada for the last 10 years, I'll grab a pizza. I grab some wings from Domino's, like a medium pizza and 8 wings, a bottle of soda, which I don't normally drink. Take it home because I do like pop. I don't know why. I like ginger ale and I do like Pepsi sometimes,
You know,
which I
you're
shouldn't. I'm getting better, but I use it as a cushion and I use it as a crutch, and I'm very much aware that it helps me to feel better. But it's only temporary. It's only in the moment, and you have to live with the consequence. And afterwards, you have to unpack. Why did you feel that way? And then, as I matured in my walk with God, I would now go into praise and worship. It's rare when something really hit me and I fall on my knees and pray. Rare. Meaning it's not my first move. So I shouldn't say rare, but you know what I mean. It's not my first move. So like now I'll not play music over and over and over and then I'll cry.
what sort of
And like
music?
gospel, Maverick City, CC Winans,
I know her.
Um, just some favorite people. So Brooklyn Tabernacle Choir, love Brooklyn Tabernacle Choir. Andre Crouch, like old music. Um, so many people from just back in the day. But I love to play gospel music. Always have, always will. And then that fills me up. And then once I'm now feeling a little bit strengthened, that's when I start going into prayer and I say, God, fix me. I always start with looking at me and I always say, God, fix me. Meaning, even if the person offended me, help me to be able to be better. Help me to be able to be that kind. And I'm not perfect. And I always tell people, like, sometimes you feel like you missed the mark and sometimes you feel like you're not close. But then God has a way of bringing me back into right relationship with Him. And sometimes He does it very quickly. I'm one of those people. I feel like I know all of us have free will, but sometimes I know that God taught me in my back. Sometimes because I'm stubborn. So sometimes He has to drape me up and, I have to stop sometimes. And sometimes He does it suddenly. He doesn't allow me to wallow and just stay there for a long time. Some days it happened like quickly, and sometimes it happened like a day or two. But yep, I get through moments when I'm crushed by some quiet time. I've learned it's good to talk with others. Absolutely good to talk with others, but you should never dump on them. I'm big about people managing what's on their plate. And so I don't know what's on your plate. And I
Right.
don't know if you have the capacity to handle what I'm going through. And I also believe it's important that I get some perspective on what I'm going through before I share it with you. So,
I agree with you. I'm big on energy. I look at
yeah,
people and I see, you can't sap someone's energy that doesn't have any energy to give. They may
yeah,
want a hug. You think you need a hug. They want one. They're dying for one because of what they're going through. So,
yeah,
Diana, tell me something. Have you got any hobbies, and what are they, and do you get time to indulge?
of course. Growing up, I had one hobby. And I think that hobby is very evident.
What is that?
I was a reader. I
Okay.
read books and books and books and books. I was an avid reader. When people say they're an avid reader, if you said you look up the word Christian and you saw Diana, you would see Diana when you look up avid reader. And so I loved books. I've never been to Sweden, but I feel like I've been to Sweden. I've never been to Switzerland, but I can tell you about those rolling hills of Switzerland, those green,
Wow.
beautiful hills. I've never been to Northern Ireland, but I can tell you about the Catholic and the Protestant war, and the soldiers who died from both sides who were related. I've never been to so many places in the world, but I've experienced it through books, right? I've never been to certain places, but I've seen, the Arabian castles and camels and all of those things. And so as a child, I was immersed in different worlds. And that's why I traveled the world. Didn't have the capacity or the money or the visas or anything to travel anywhere, but I traveled through books. Never been to Trinidad and Tobago,
No,
but I remember vividly the year in San Fernando, right? Um, I remember the games were coming by Michael Anthony. So it's like, that's the same thing. So Derek Walcott from St. Lucia. I've never been to St. Lucia, right? But they through their writing, they transport you to fields and to stadiums and to games and to characters. And so for me, that was my hobby. And as I grew older, I got an appreciation for television, something I didn't embrace as a child or as a teen. And then I fell in love with travel. The minute I could start traveling, I started traveling. And so traveling is my new hobby.
okay.
It's a passion of mine.
So, with that said, Mills and Boone, Nancy Drew when you were young? No? Does
A
that?
little bit of Mills and Boons, some Nancy Drew, but I read my older cousin's literature books. So I was like a bookie nerd, like from
What about
six,
Jackie
seven.
Collins? The world is
Yes,
filled with married men and all those things.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I used to read those books back in the
I've
day.
read some of those. I've read James Patterson. If the person has written it, I have read some of their work. But I did love more literature style writing, some more Caribbean literature, Canadian literature too. We had some great Canadian authors who we studied, but it was more taking books from a bookcase that had glass. And it was that kind of thing. So it was reading all your first form book, your Annie John, before you got to first form, reading your Chrysalis. So it was all the literature book, hundreds and hundreds of them.
What are you reading now?
What I'm reading now, self help. I'm reading The Emotionally Healthy Woman.
Okay.
I am reading Clean Up Your Mental Mess. I'm reading everything that,
How many
you
hours you put in towards this reading a day?
I would say at least an hour. I read a lot.
Wow.
And I'm constantly reading because I'm constantly studying. So I've been studying for
Audibles?
the
You ever tried
last,
Audibles?
yes. But
Okay.
I am a visual learner. I'm also old school. I like to feel the pages between my fingers, going back and forth. So for me, that's the pleasure in reading. You become familiar with the pages and become familiar with the characters, and then it some of the images come to life just from the pages. I enjoy hearing it, but I'm not a big auditory learner or a big auditory receiver. I love reading a good book. For the last 5 years, I've been studying, and I felt like that robbed me of my leisure reading. And then prior to studying, I was all about debt management. So I was into all the books. And in Canada, we have some amazing authors: Susie Orman, David Bach,
I know
um,
Susie Oman.
Susie Orman, Gail Baz Oxlade. We have some amazing people. And what they do is they write their own life stories and they use it as a lessons for managing your debt, growing your wealth. There's, I think it was David Back who wrote Wealthy Barber, and he talked about his dad. And then there's another David, I think his name was David Chilton. So there was a time when I was in my investments and my managing my debt era from I came to Canada, I'd say 2015 to about 2000. I had a good friend and we'd read the books. I'd borrow the books from the library. She would get a copy. If she didn't have it, I'd read it to her. And I'd read out the book in a day, 2 day, 3 day. And I just stay up at night and I'm just reading. And so I'm a big consumer of knowledge. I believe everything you need to know is in a book somewhere. You just literally have to open it. Right now, I have students and just people that I meet every day that struggle. You ask them to do an assignment and they think, um, oh, it's the internet and AI. Absolutely not. There's so many authors that have written on everything. If it's software, people have spent the time to do the research on software.
Yes, yes,
If it's
yes.
relationships, people have spent the time. If it's leadership, there's lots of authors on leadership, right? John Maxwell, Miles Monroe, different people get into a book, but a book is very foreign to most people because they say they have Google and Chat GPT and all of these things, which is amazing. And I'm just now learning about these things in the last 2 years,
Well, don't
and
knock it. Don't knock it.
I'm not knocking it, but if you know somebody who has a degree in English,
Yeah.
we are the most resistant, stubborn, backward library people.
Right, right.
Somebody paid me to edit their work 5 years ago, and the person was like, "What tool are you using to edit?" And I said, "Diana's brain." I believe my siblings and my close friends and my students have the best AI tool ever. I believe I'm on par with AI in terms of my thoughts sometimes. Like when I look
Tell
at it, I'm
me.
like, oh, girl, you're on the right track. Like
Te-
I just, I don't,
do you
and I'm
speak
not
patois
one.
at all? Do you speak patois?
I do.
Were you allowed to at school?
Yes. And in your home too as well, right? I was raised in Kingston, Jamaica. The thing is, my grandmother was from Manchester, and which is considered to be a rural parish. And she was from a rural area in Manchester, but she
What
did
part of
not
Manchester? Manchester big. What part?
huge. I don't remember. Some
Okay.
grown. It and the
Okay.
word end with grown. The name end with grown, but I can't remember. But some grown. I don't remember. We had gone there once, but she didn't speak a lot. The thing is, patois is different all over. And somebody would tell you that I'm speaking Kingston patois, because this is how Kingston people speak. I am speaking broken English some of the time, especially now. I'm doing it deliberately. So, Kingston, if you're from Kingston, you speak lots of broken English. We sometimes draw our words out. We're expressive, but you have to remember that because it's an urban center, we're not going to sound like what you expect our entire, like what the rest of the country patois sound like. And every patois is unique. The Montegonians have a beautiful patois. They speak with their own patois, with their own accent, some their own words. People from Westmoreland have their own patois as well. But you have to remember that being from Kingston, you think you're from the city, and you go to a traditional high school,
You
so
do better.
you're speaking part. No, we're not better. You're speaking partial patois because we know patois is good, right? It's its own language and rules. But definitely, yes, I do speak patois.
Okay. So so a spectrum of people will watch this. So when I say, so if I was to say to you, you speak very well. And when I say speak very well, I don't mean you speak very well for a Jamaican. You
Right.
speak very well. And I want to know, how is it that Diana speaks so well? And is it the book reading, or is it from high school? Because I know lots of girls that went to my high school that speak very well.
Um, Primary school. So definitely I have to credit to my grandma. The books she believed you had to read. So the more you read is the more you know. And so that gives you a rich vocabulary that helps you to express yourself. But I had lots, I would say I had some formal training. So in primary school, I did spelling bee. In primary school, I did speech choir. In primary school, I did debate. Now, if you know anybody who is a debater, they
Yep.
are going to learn some skills of arguing, right? The debating is the art. It's the art of arguments, and then once you've done that and you have your arguments, your teachers then are going to talk to you about eloquence and pronunciation and articulation and being convincing. And so I did that for quite a number of years in primary school. Didn't debate at Wolmers. I don't think we had a debating club, but I did speech choir at Wolmers and I did drama at Wolmers. And then in university, did a little bit of university debating and university drama. But definitely, it is the debating. We had some good training. We had amazing, amazing. Jamaica has some, we have a rich history. We have a rich history. And like the debate comes from Britain. And it's modeled after the parliamentary style of doing debates and raising arguments. But I believe our Jamaican education system is really top tier because we would debate all across the island. And it was an inter-prep and primary competition. And it was every primary school that had the support, had the resources. Students could go up and they could debate and they could, be trained. We had students on our team that stuttered and our teachers didn't see it as a deterrent. They worked with the students. They helped us to develop confidence, and a big part of speaking well is just a confidence in yourself and confidence to trust. So none of this is perfection. I'm actually not trying to put on. I'm not trying to be perfect. I'm not trying to sound like anybody else. This is just me on any old regular day, um, and it just becomes a part of who you are. Developing the confidence to trust that what you're saying has some value and that you have some value. And I think a part of it is linked to who you are. Lots of students are afraid, or people are just afraid to be themselves. I've heard lots of eloquence. So eloquence don't mean standard English either. I've heard lots and lots of people speak patois, full blown patois, but they're so eloquent, so passionate, so clear,
I
so
find
full of
it
love. Yeah.
I find it sometimes difficult for myself. I was born in England, went to Jamaica when I was 10, and for the 5 years in Jamaica, all my Jamaican friends that I went to high school with, when I speak when I don't speak patois or the way they used to, or they hear me now, they're like, hey, what's going on? It's like, it's a little bit different, with the eloquence that you talk about. And then
Yeah.
now I'm in the USA and in the south of the USA, and it's a little bit different. It's not like New York or one of them big business centric. It
Yeah.
started out real cowboy, so as a black guy you sound real different. So you have to make sure that you communicate so people can understand, and you don't want
Absolutely.
to stand out. Hey, when you die, would you like to be
Yes.
cremated or buried, and why?
Buried. Absolutely. And simply just because of my knowledge. Not everything, not all the decisions we make are going to be based on your faith. Some of it's going to be based on your culture and your experience and your exposure. I have not had a lot of exposure to persons who were cremated, and so it's more foreign to me. It's more something that I'm not accustomed to, and personally, something I'm very uncomfortable with. I do believe I would want to be buried, and I know the body decays, and the bones break down, and it becomes a shell and very light after a certain number of years. But that's okay.
I
I'd like
bet
to
you
be
any
buried.
money, I can bet my bottom dollar that you're not an organ donor neither.
I am.
Wow.
I am. Yeah.
So okay. So that is totally the opposite than I was thinking. When we expire, Diana, what do you think happens to us? Keep it slipping off my table.
So the body dies, but you have a soul. Man was created with a soul, a living soul inside of him. And it's that soul that allows you to be saved. And so when man dies, your body dies completely. You're dead. There's no more connection to this living world. You're asleep in your grave and you're waiting for that day when your soul will be awakened. But when you die, you die. No two ways about it.
So this whole soul and the awakened body, where did you get that information from?
Now that's biblical. So that's
Okay.
strictly biblical and that's linked to my faith.
Okay.
I believe that the soul, man has a living soul, and it's that living soul that allows you to be saved, allows you to be in relationship with God. And so when you die, your soul rests in a place. And if you when you die in Christ, when it's resting and it's dead, right? So it's not communing with anybody, it's not doing anything, it's not roaming the earth. I don't believe any of those things. So your soul dies too within. Your soul is resting. But because when you're saved, you're dead in Christ. And so I also believe in the rapture. I also believe in a heaven. And so I believe that once he returns, my soul will be raptured.
I have
And now
a
rapture is not an easy concept to get, not an easy one to get. And I don't think this is a religious programming,
no, no,
but
no. You know what's really
just to
beautiful? I
say,
love to hear great minds express themselves. We have time,
yes,
so I'm trying to learn.
yes.
So, do you appreciate that there are people that don't want to be part of any of these clubs, cults, religion, faith? They just want to be kind people and be a better version of themselves tomorrow than they were today, and they want to just be good people. Can you wrap that? And they don't want to read no 52 books, no verse or nothing. They're not interested. They hate when they sneeze and someone says bless you. You look at them and you want to say, why are you blessing me? You know what I mean? Yeah. So do you
Um,
appreciate when
I,
these people are,
I appreciate that. You know why? Because I appreciate that all of us was once in a place where we didn't know, right? I genuinely wholeheartedly believe that there on the other side of this Diana is a Diana that didn't know God, is a Diana that didn't believe or didn't know. So although I told you earlier, maybe 20 minutes ago, that I was raised in church, born and raised, lived in a household where we always went to church. As far back as I can remember, 5, 6, 7 years old, walking to church with my grandma, walking to church with my siblings. I am sure there was a time when I didn't know God, because we are born without knowing that there's something bigger than us. And so to those persons, I know there are persons, many persons out there who, I just want to be a good person. I want to be better tomorrow than I am today. I want to be kind. I'm certainly not thinking of committing any illegal act. They're not looking to maybe lie, steal, kill anybody. They're not harmful people. But if you should also ask some of those persons, and I'm not saying you're one of them, but if you think about it, remember earlier you took me back to the fact that I attach a pronoun to the being, I attach a name to the being, and I call him God. Mankind, because we're not just flesh, because we're soul, that soul is always looking for something. That soul knows there's something greater. And so sometimes when you talk to some people who will say, I don't want to hear anything about God, or I don't believe in faith, or I don't have a need for that. If you still ask them, there is something inside of people. We're created with a longing. We're created with a longing to be attached to something greater than us. Some persons will, those people who don't believe in a God, you said, there's very few people who believe in nothing. There's very few people in the world who believe in an emptiness of nothing. There are a number of people now who will say, I believe in the universe, I believe in energy, I believe in the law of reciprocity, which means if I'm good, the world will be good back to me. And so that's also linked to energy. And then there are some people who also believe in the goodness of other people. And so the good they see in their mom, in their spouse, in their children, that's good enough for them. That's a manifestation of that. There's good in the world, and I don't need any other example of anything else, and I don't need to be attached to anything else. But the very fact that you're identifying that trait in family and in other people, it means so there's a connection. It's the same connection that I have with God, it's the same connection you're having with the thing you're attaching to, because that's a soul connection. And so human beings were created with this living soul that's always seeking some communion.
I agree.
And
I
so
actually I do agree with you totally. Everybody everybody needs that hug because we don't know what the future is all about and we seek it in any way. Some way you would call negative, they may hit the bottle. Some may have a little smoke. Some will take a pill. Some people go to church 7 days a week or nine. You know, some people read every day, they just keep on reading. Some
yeah.
people can't stop learning. Some people can't stop exercising. So I just think there's something out there that is really, making us humans strive and want. That's what I believe. So,
And that's a good word. And that's a way to look at it. And I think if we all go through life just having compassion and understanding,
by the way, cheers.
what's that?
Um, Appleton 12 years old.
Okay.
This is the True Blue Lounge,
Okay.
So it's all about relaxation.
I brought my water.
Okay. So, would you say the high school that you went to, Wolmers, set you up to be the lady that you are today? Or do you think, it's more your grandmother, your mother, and other people around you that influence you? And have you got any siblings, by the way?
Lots. Lots and lots of siblings.
Oh,
Your mouth is open.
okay. How many siblings have you got? What do you say?
So my mom has 7 children. So I have
Okay.
6 siblings with my mom.
Okay.
And I would say my dad has about maybe 8 or 9 of us, a little bit more.
That's beautiful. So you know what? The Chinese, they're having a real bad problem with their birth
Population.
rate. Yeah. Some of your little nephews and stuff, I really believe they need to start. I think for China and Japan to survive in the next 2 decades, they're gonna have to go to Africa or Jamaica.
They
One
will.
of those civilizations where having kids is something. It means
It's
something.
promoted. But
Yeah.
Jamaica is also having that concern now. That's now coming out in the media where they're saying, women are now waiting, delaying, and also saying they're not going to do it or they're having one. So in a couple of years, Jamaica may get there as well, but it's not as crucial at the moment. But I know those major countries have that challenge. But you ask a good question. For many people, they can pinpoint one thing. They could pinpoint one singular thing and they could say it's cool. In a haste, I could rush and say, yeah, absolutely, Wolmer's girls. But then when you take a moment and you're reflective, you recognize it's a composite of factors. And for me, definitely a combination of things that made me the person who I am. Some figures are more prominent. They feature more prominently in my story. My grandma is one of those persons that feature very, very prominently in my story, just in terms of making me who I am, some of my traits, my characteristics, my mannerisms, I'm a very structured person, very orderly, very disciplined. I got lots of that from her. Very loving, very kind, very generous. Also got that from her. And then where my grandma was strong, I saw my mom being gentle. And so that was two opposing forces. And so I also learned from my mom that art of just being meek, something that doesn't come naturally to me, but it's a quality that, even the Bible endears you to, being meek, being gentle, being forgiving. And so I'm a lot of who I am based on my parents. And then I had my dad, who I could observe being an entrepreneur, always own his own boss, in control of his own time. And so from him, I learned the value of like hard work, the hustle, pushing yourself no matter what. He's one of the most resilient persons I know. And so I would say I had a strong family structure that really instilled some great values in me. And then definitely high school, and then primary school. I had a great primary school experience. My primary school was out of this world. We traveled all across Jamaica, went to Mount Alvernia Prep, went to Alvernia Prep as well. I think in Kingston, Alvernia is in Kingston, Mount Alvernia is in Country. Went to St. George's Girls Primary, went to St. Aloysius Primary. Like we went to Queen's Prep at the time too. So I feel like I just had a life where I was exposed, went on lots of primary school trips, Puerto Rico Beach. There's another beach too that we went to. Can't remember it right now, but just I was very, very exposed. My grandma didn't have a lot of money, but she believed that children should get the opportunity. And she wasn't educated beyond like a certain grade level, but was she ever brilliant? She had the most intellectually stimulated mind, very curious, very bright, very articulate, very well versed in like politics, history. She could tell a story. And she believed that one way to get, really, or the main way to change your life was through education.
Mm-hmm.
And she never deprived us of anything once she could make it happen within reason.
Mm-hmm.
We were exposed. And so I believe much of who I am, I owe largely to her. And I would say the kindness and like if it was up to my grandma, I'd be like, she's born in May. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe in, astrology and those kind of things, but she's a Taurus. And she always said that she's a typical bull. Now,
Mm-hmm.
can you imagine a woman being a bull?
Mm-hmm.
A bull is a male cow,
Wow.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So and she defines herself by that. She defines herself as a woman wielding a machete.
Mm-hmm.
So she defines herself as a warrior, and she defines herself as the aggressor.
Mm-hmm.
Like she always said, you hit first. Don't let
Mm-hmm.
anybody hit you. And
Mm-hmm.
if they hit you first, you hit them twice as hard back.
Wow.
So she defined herself as a boxing champion. And this lady was barely above 5 feet. Now, you tell me if you want that woman to be the totality of my influence.
Diana.
No, that's that, life is about balance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Diana, I feel jealous that you're able to not only look at your school, but you're able to pinpoint people that are so close, near and dear to you that you can look up to and say they were part of your renaissance.
Yeah.
For me, it was totally different. I remember I'm off the rails. I'm detached from, my siblings as far as advice on growing up. I remember being at work as an 18-year-old radio technician working in London, and two guys, one named Colin Brown and one named Colin Allen. So if I'm 18, these guys are like 24, 25, and I'm like the young buck. And I'm going to clubs in London 2 o'clock in the morning, and 7 o'clock I'm supposed to be
At
to
work.
work. And you can see my lifestyle is getting in the way of my career. And both of them pulled me aside. And honestly, the trajectory of my whole life just
Changed.
went up just by
Wow.
having these brothers just sit me down and talk to me for 15 minutes, or while we're in the Sharpe Metropolitan Police bus, because we used to fix all the police radios and stuff, while we're in this Sherpa, and them talking to me and just, you know, dripping me with knowledge and
Yeah.
guidance. Don't let your social life get in the way of your career. And that was it for me.
Wow.
That
And
was
that
it
was
for me.
it.
Yep, yep,
Turn
yep.
around.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Most definitely. No brothers, no sisters, I think when you're the youngest as well, nobody no business with you. Literally nobody no business when you're youngest. So for
Yeah.
you out there that have younger siblings, check on them. because
Absolutely.
because the influence can be positive and negative. That's the point I'm making.
Absolutely.
If you were able to meet someone living or dead just to have dinner with, who would you choose? Give me two or three people if it's as much as that.
In this political climate, I dare to still say Barack Obama. Loved him then, love him now. Um, I would also say Michelle Obama as well. I find her very inspirational. A force to be reckoned with, a woman of, much honor and value. And there are many things I admire about her. And one other person who would I like to meet? Um, Maybe Sarah Jakes Roberts, TD Jakes' daughter.
Why her?
Um, I like her. I like her ministry. I believe she's a woman of impact. And she's also a woman of faith, woman of inspiration. And I believe I like people who come back, who I like overcomers. I like people who their comeback is bigger than their setback. People who believe in themselves and they back themselves to show up. It wasn't just a name she had, it wasn't just her dad. I believe she found a way to stand on her own 2 feet and claw her way back after many challenges, being a young mom, going through different challenges. And I just believe she has risen back to a place where she's inspiring women all around the world.
Cool, that's
As
beautiful.
much as I love my grandma, I'm not bringing anybody back from the dead to talk to them. I don't believe in that. What we did was we made sure, and while she was alive, we spoke to her lots and lots and lots. I remember in 2020 when she had a heart attack and I came to Jamaica. I had a cell phone, a very small old cell phone, and I was recording lots of the things she said. And interestingly, I don't have some of that audio. Actually, I have the audio, but the audio is on a little tiny SIM card. It was one of those micro SIM cards that you had to pull out, put it in an envelope, taped it on the envelope to keep it safe. Look at that beautiful phone, man. Oh gosh. And I lost it. I don't have a lot of things, but you know what? It's stored up here. All of her lessons are still up here. And so I believe I take her with me every day. I walk with her. I walk with the lessons she taught me. I walk with the principles. Sometimes I'm about to do something and I reflect on my value and I'm like, no, some basic things. I don't lie a lot. I try not to lie a lot, and especially becoming a Christian. And then, especially in the last 7 years, I would say I've become fully liberated, especially when I worked at the bank. We developed a thing where it better you speak the truth no matter what, and we fix the issue than you lie about it and we don't fix the issue. So we had a principle in the bank that said everything could be fixed. Everything, even people who walk away with the bank's money. We always said things could be fixed, but you had to speak the truth. And so I've gone through that. So like now, you have students or people who will quiver and say, "Ooh, I have to lie because I have to get out of trouble," or "I didn't do this homework." So when people say to me, "Diana, did you do this?" So I'm very truthful. In COVID, we were online. We were online for online service, and we weren't always in church. And when numbers were small, everybody couldn't get into church. And my pastors and people say to me, "Were you on service?" And I said, "Absolutely not."
That's nice.
I'm like, no. And I know the thing they want to hear is, yes, you were online and you were listening and whatever. I'm not lying. Even now, if I cannot join, and I say to them, if I'm not in church, chances are I'm not up to being in church. But I'm not going to be out at home and online. I don't know why, but I don't love online services, like an online preaching message. I'll listen to snippets, but I'll try to listen in my bed and I'd fall asleep as a sleeper, and then I'd listen to the praise and worship. I can stay up for the praise and worship. I can't stay up for anything else. And so most of the time I just gave up. I would just like have my breakfast and then I would just nap throughout the day. And so when they said people could go back and the numbers went to like 10 or 15, I made sure to be in church every single week. Do I love God? Absolutely. But can I church online? No. I'm the person who is sleeping, yawning, walking away. But there's a fear when people ask you certain questions where you think you're going to be judged. Your natural inclination is to lie. And I'll just say to people, I didn't. Did you join online? No. Were you on service? No. Did you do this? So, like sometimes people just ask you some questions and you say, yes, I did. Even at work, no matter what it is. And I've always said to people, and I always, just try to build a culture of honesty. I get that from my grandmother. My grandmother said a liar and a thief walk hand in hand.
They do.
And she said, if you lie, you must thief.
Teeth. Yeah.
No, that's scary.
Yeah.
That is scary to know that you're going to build a life around that. And so daily, God help, purify my heart. Create in me a clean heart, Lord, and renew a right spirit in me. And let me just daily live out some values which are which are worthy and just which makes sense, right? And so sometimes people think, they lie to get out of trouble. Like, listen to me, no matter what it is, nobody can beat you. And even if they can beat you, risk the beating, risk getting in trouble, but speak the truth and you'll feel just so liberated. Sometimes did you get this done? No. And you move on.
My last question for you, and I'm going to do a segment after this, but I'm going to make you answer this last question for you is when you think of the future, are you hopeful? Yes, no, why?
I'm very hopeful. My faith in God, I'm very, very hopeful. I am and I have always been and will always be hopeful. Yes, I'm hopeful.
Okay, okay. So, Diana, I am really, really happy that you took the time out of your busy schedule to come to the True Blue Lounge. Everyone, please like, comment, and subscribe. I thank you, thank you, thank you. When this is over, I'm going to stay on and we'll do a couple more segments, okay? Thank you very
Okay.
much, Diana.
No, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Good, good,
I've
good,
not
good.
had some of these questions before. I've never had some of these questions. So I appreciate it. Thank you for wanting to know about my high school story
Nice,
and
great.
my a little bit about my upbringing. Yeah.
Okay.